Hello, it's another book talk with Tracy, and today I'm continuing to talk about my book, Keeping Up with the Neighbours, which is the second book in the Neighbours series. And so this is segment 2 of my discussions about this book. And there's a lot to say. Last time I talked about the inspiration, which was, Jed Malloy, who appeared in the first book in the Neighbours series. And he was such a fun character that I knew he needed his own book, and I brought in all of his many siblings. They are from Newfoundland, and they're just such a fun bunch of characters. They're rough. They're rough around the edges. They like to party and drink and wrestle and fight, but they are also very soft-hearted. So that's where this book comes from. And, this is the original cover, and so you can see there's various characters there that I really like the pictures of the characters, because to me these perfectly embodied what I pictured these people to be like in my mind when I was writing the book. However, it does have a new, refreshed, more contemporary cover, which I also like. It's a little simpler, and it kind of goes along with the first book in the series really well. So one of the things that I mentioned is it is a Christian book, and it's fun because it highlights how God can really change people, even rough people like the Malloys. So it was written as a series of novellas similar to the first book. And the first one, of course, focuses on Jed, who is the eldest brother from the Malloy clan. And it's called Neighborhood Tangle, because Jed gets tangled up in this complicated relationship. Jed, he's got issues. He's got hang-ups. He drinks too much. He's getting older. He thinks that he might like to settle down someday, but, he almost has kind of given up on that idea. He is very loyal. However, he has a deep sense of family when it comes to his own siblings and kind of looking out for them. And he meets this woman, and he's surprised because he's very attracted to her, and yet he's unsure, because on the one hand she seems like she also likes him. She seems like a really nice woman, and then sometimes he sees her and she's all dressed up like she's going out on the town, and he thinks, wow, that's not how she looked last time. So he's kind of getting these mixed messages, but he finally decides that he's ready to jump in there. And then he finds out, that she's a Christian, and she's not sure she wants to be dating somebody like him, because, as I said, he's kind of rough. So he's kind of heartbroken. But it's a bit of a tangle. His life feels really complicated and tangled in his first episode. And in that episode, we also meet, of course, all the other siblings, because they've come for a visit. They came at Christmas time, and then some of them end up staying. So we move on to the second episode, which is called Neighborhood Watch. And that one focuses on the brother, Bo. Now, Bo is probably the most tame and quiet of the Malloy clan, although comparatively speaking, he can still hold his own when it comes to a fight and when it comes to drinking. But in comparison to the rest of them, he's more reflective. He's the sensible one, if you will, and he decides that he's going to stay in Calgary because he gets a job at the Urban Cowboy, which is this local pub that is frequently a place where the characters go to socialize. So he gets a job there, and then he ends up meeting the stepsister of his boss, who's this very gorgeous woman from Quebec. She's French, but she seems a little bit snobby. She's out of his league. And so he's kind of heartbroken, but he tries to keep it together, because in his mind, being the one that is the most sensible, he kind of feels like he's obligated to make sure everybody else stays in line. So that's Neighborhood Watch. Then the third episode focuses on Reba, who's the only sister who gets her own episode. The other three older sisters, Sissy, Mary, and Fanny, don't. They appear in one short scene, but other than that, Reba is the youngest sister. She's a fiery redhead. In fact, her brothers call her Spitfire, and this one's called Neighborhood Rebel because she is rebellious. She doesn't like it that her brothers are always, pampering her, treating her like a girl. She thinks that she should be able to drink and do whatever she wants, the same as the boys, and she doesn't like to be treated any differently. So in this episode, she also decides to stay. She gets a job working at a hair salon with some women who are also part of the mix of characters in the books. And we just see her rebellious streak, like how she's making maybe some poor choices, but, determined to do things her way. So that's Reba. Volume number 4 is called Neighborhood Upstart, and it's about the youngest member of the family whose nickname is Pip. His real name is Steve, but when he was born, his siblings called him Pipsqueak, and it just stuck. So this is Pip, and he's your typical baby of the family. He's a little bit spoilt. He's a little bit entitled. He doesn't really want to follow the rules or care what anybody says. He and his sister Reba have some clashing because they're the two youngest. She was treated like the princess. He was treated like the spoiled little boy. And so he comes to Calgary and he gets into all kinds of shenanigans. And we see where that leads into the next episode, which is number 5, called Neighborhood Freedom. Now this one's a little bit different because it starts out in Newfoundland with their brother Will. And Will Malloy is, I wouldn't say he's the most sensible, but he's certainly the most quiet. He doesn't see the need to talk or use words or be loud if he doesn't have to. How he expresses his boisterous nature is through extreme sports. So he loves anything that's risky. He's out there doing it. Very athletic. And he actually works at Grossmore National Park in Newfoundland. But he is somehow convinced that he should come out for a visit and check it out with his other siblings. So he does that. And it's almost like he experiences this sense of freedom when he's actually away from the rest of his family, because he goes to work in at a remote resort in the Rocky Mountains near Calgary, near Banff, where he meets this girl, of course. And he has to sort of reconcile his feelings for her with his need to be free, because he doesn't want to be tied down. And then we come to episode 6, which is about probably one of my favorite characters, Zeb. He's the second brother. He's next in line to Jed. He and Jed have had a long-standing, relationship where they're wrestling and competing with one another, of course, in a good way. He's a giant of a man. And he works in Fort McMurray, Alberta. So he comes for visits. He comes for visits occasionally. And wherever Zeb goes, that trouble or at least excitement is going to follow. He's the one who's getting into all kinds of, trouble. He loves to party. He loves to he loves girls and all that stuff. And yet we see that he also has kind of this soft heart, similar to the rest of them. And this one's called Neighborhood Cupid, because when he comes for a visit, he realizes that all of his siblings are suffering. And so when I refurbished it recently with this new cover, I divided it into shorter segments. So we have Neighborhood Raucous, Neighborhood Heartache, Neighborhood Games, Neighborhood Quest, Neighborhood Nor'Wester, Neighborhood Surprise, Wish